and welcome to CEDIA Expo Virtual. This Tech Talk session, Integrators and Professional Lighting Designers, Successful Project Collaborations. High-end residential design teams sometimes include architectural lighting designers. Nurturing relationships and setting clear divisions of work with lighting upfront provide immense opportunities to both parties. Our panel discussion will talk about how this relationship can be win-win for the homeowner, the integrator, and the lighting design professional. A special thank you to our sponsors, Lutron Ketra and Tech Lighting, a visual comfort group company. So I'd like to welcome our panelists. Our first panelist participating, Gregg Mackell, professional lighting designer and founding principal of 186 Lighting Design Group in Denver.
Hi, thanks for having me, Tom.
Yeah, good to see you. And then we also have Ann Kustner, president of AKLD Lighting Design Limited in Chicago.
Good to be here. Thanks, Tom.
At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat function and a Q&A function. Please make sure to put any and all questions into the Q&A function, and we will do our best to answer those questions at the end of the session. So I'm Tom Doherty, and we're going to get started here. Gregg, with the proliferation of integrators now involved in the supply and integration of architectural lighting, you have experienced both challenges and successful collaborations with integrators. What advice would you give to integrators to create better teams and avoid future issues?
Thanks, Tom. This is actually a great and very timely question. On projects we've had, we have had some really great successful projects with integrators who supplied the lighting, did the programming of the different recessed and architectural lights we have throughout a project. But we've also had some hiccups along the road, and I can trace the vast majority of those to basically having integrators talk to clients about lighting without having a lighting designer in the room, or talk to a homeowner about a particular specification without vetting it through the lighting designer first. And one thing that I think when we're involved in a project that integrators may not understand is they don't necessarily know what they don't know, and their proposed solution maybe is a value engineering option where they think they're offering the client a value proposition. It may solve one problem but may cause 5 other problems.
Mm-hmm.
But by vetting a VE solution or a proposed substitution, anything like that, with the lighting designer, offline from the client, from the builder, from the architect, but offline to see if that's something that should be talked about, I think that could avoid a lot of different problems that we've run into.
So Ann, when should an integrator get a lighting designer involved?
Well, I think an integrator should get a lighting designer involved anytime or immediately. So, and I think, the sooner a lighting designer is on the project, the more cohesive the project can be. That being said, I mean, we've gotten involved at all sorts of stages, and it really depends, I think, on the type of home it is, the style. I mean, if it's more contemporary, the sooner the better. But we always like to have a furniture plan done is ideal to when to get us involved. But I think too, lighting designers should reach out to AV dealers or integrators and get them involved or make relationships, anytime before a project even comes up, so that when an AV dealer has a project that might need a lighting designer or might benefit from a lighting designer being involved, that they already have the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Gregg, you have any thoughts on that as well?
I think there's definitely a good time to get a lighting designer involved where maybe the specification of the products could be critical with the construction. Say there's something very specific like a wood slat ceiling and only certain types of fixtures work in something like that. It may be something that we have tools that the integrator doesn't know about, or ways that we can get involved in, and avoid somebody supplying fixtures to a project that they're going to be pretty tough to make work or won't work, which is never a fun place to be. But I think, like Ann said, the sooner the better in a project. There is a point where it's too early, where maybe walls are still moving, and there's a lot of things going on where we could just burn a lot of design time on nothing. But I think once the architecture's firmed up, like Ann said, ideally you have furniture plan, built-in elevations, then we jump in and we're very efficient with our time.
Great. So Greg, and I'm going to stay with you on this next question. If an integrator recommends you for a project, but has already created a sale of a particular brand of light fixtures or controls to a client, what is your philosophy regarding keeping the specification if you're brought on board?
Okay. My philosophy, and it may be different from one lighting design firm to another, but I don't like to bite the hand that's feeding me. So if somebody does bring us on board, but they've already had an owner to their office, and they've shown them lighting that they have set up in their conference room, and then bring us on board, I think there's definitely a fear that a lighting designer will come in and change all the specs, and that the integrator will lose a sale on the project. I look at it, just me personally, as a given. If that's something where the integrator has brought me on board, we can have a discussion up front, make sure we're on the same page. It may be something we don't want to touch because of whatever it is, but if it seems like it's something that can work, then I think we don't try to rock the boat.
So you're just communicating that there's flexibility and there's discussion. There's no hard line necessarily. And what value does an integrator deliver on your specified projects?
Well, we always love working as a team. It just makes everything go smoother, faster, better. I would say, and we've reached out to other AV contractors and said, what does a lighting designer help with on your projects? And they say it runs smoother, faster, and so they put more profitable, which is good. The whole project runs more smoothly from the contractor down to the client. And also it's good for networking for future business. So it's always great to be able to have a team that works well together.
Great. Greg, how would an integrator, and this is really to both of you, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, but how would an integrator go about finding a good lighting designer to partner with?
Okay, thanks, Tom. I think there are resources like the International Association of Lighting Designers, the IALD. On their website, they have a Find a Lighting Designer tool. So that's something where you can go and see links to different lighting designers' websites, see if they specialize in hospitals or stadiums, or whether it's somebody who's really tailored their business to high-end residential projects that might be a good fit. And that is one starting point. I think another thing that you can do is a lot of the sales reps from controls companies and lighting companies across the country kind of know who most of us are. And they might be a very good resource to reach out to. They may know that if they're in a market where there really isn't a lighting design firm that's local, lighting designers work pretty much anywhere, because most of what we do can be done online and with PDFs. But I think that reaching out to the sales world, they might know if we might have another project going on in whatever locale that they're in, and they might know we're going into their town already. So I think those are a couple resources. And Ann, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say, one thing about the IALD website is you can actually put in the region or the city or the metropolitan area that you're in or your project's in. So that's nice, going back to the IALD.org. And I guess word of mouth. And I think the CDS show and these types of, venues offer the ability for contractors to talk to contractors, like who's easy to work with, who does a great job, those types of things, because word of mouth amongst ourselves is really good as well.
Right. And, Greg kind of touched on this, but, I'd like you to expand. Are lighting designers constrained by the geography? I mean, you're in Chicago, Greg is in Denver, um, you know, uh, or are you able to take on projects anywhere?
We work on projects from coast to coast. We've done Canada, we've done Central America and beyond. So it really doesn't matter. And I think this whole COVID crisis, I think the good thing that's come out of it is that people realize you don't have to be right across the table for them to design. I think these type of Zoom venues is great. And I think really our designers and the architects we work with are all over the place, and that's the beauty of it, I think. And Greg, I mean, I'd like to hear your thoughts too, but oftentimes even on some of the bigger projects, the first time we're on site is to aim and to tweak the controls programming. So I don't know, I mean, granted, because we did a project in Guam once, and the person's was there with their cell phone holding up, showing us the microlam that there was interference with our fixture. So it's crazy how the digital media can, substitute for a trip.
Yeah, and I'd just like to jump in there too. We do work like Ann, all over the place, and I think it's really something that if the project and the team or the owners are a good fit, it doesn't really matter where the location is. There are advantages to knowing different, supply houses in a particular area, or having worked with electricians before. So we tend to do projects in cities outside of Denver, you know, 4 or 5 in a particular location at a time is not unusual, because we develop those relationships. But in general, we can work anywhere, just about any time.
Great. And so do lighting designers sell or want to sell architectural lighting fixtures?
Never. I shouldn't say that. There is a very small group that does. Having in a previous life worked at a distributor, I never want to sell anything. And I mean, because something comes in broken or late or delayed or not working, it's like life is too short. I think Greg will agree. We're designers. We want to design lighting. We want to design pretty things, and we don't want to sell equipment. So I don't know, Greg.
I'll second what Ann just said.
So much like architects don't want to sell windows or roofing material or flooring material or kitchens, they like yourselves are professionals, and you sell your time and your expertise and your design. And so an IALD designer like yourselves, that's part of your ethos, much like an AIA architect is not supposed to profit from the products that they design or specify. And that's the difference with yourself and your immediate peers, I guess. Am I saying that correctly?
I think that's a great analogy. Yeah, we don't sell anything, and it allows us to be an unbiased opinion, and it allows for us to actually, we help AV contractors or integrators, because we're saying you really need this lighting control system. You really there's no walls, only windows, 5 rooms in one. You need a lighting control system. So I think we're there as an unbiased opinion, and a lot of our clientele, I mean, are very successful people, and they really appreciate an unbiased opinion.
Yes. So that's a clear advantage, is for an integrator to bring in, one of either one of you or your peers, is that the client appreciates your unbiased but talent, but ultimately it results for an integrator a larger lighting control system. And now that many of them have access and source and can help assist in the project management and supply the fixtures, it can result in a great partnership. I think that's one of the key messages I'd like the integrators that are watching this to have as a takeaway. So Greg, how do lighting designers contract to design a project? Do you contract directly with a homeowner, through the architect, an interior designer, a builder? Are you a sub-consultant to the integrator? How do you work? How do you contract your services?
Oh, thanks, Tom. That's a really good question. And we do, I guess we're fairly flexible on how we contract. I'd say the vast majority of projects we have, we're contracted directly with an owner, but we have contracts with trusts and architects, interior designers, contractors. We've even been sub-consultants to integrators as well as electrical contractors on projects when the project just calls for that type of thing. So we can write up a proposal and work through anywhere, and just know that as a lighting designer, our goal is always the same, and that's to have a great project with happy clients at the end. So whatever makes sense for a particular team, if we are subcontracted to somebody like an integrator, it's a lot more paperwork on their end. So a lot of times we'll get brought in on a project and they'll just ask us to contract directly with the architect or through the homeowner directly. But I think every project's got its own intricacies, and I don't know if you kind of work the same way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even if an architect brings us on board or an interior designer, we still write the contract and typically on high-end residential work directly for or get paid directly from the client.
Mm-hmm. But would it be fair to say that a significant referrals that when you're brought in on projects, a significant amount of that is through recommendation from architectural firms? Is that fair to say that?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. Oftentimes, and Greg, I'm sure this happens with you, it's like, wow, the interior designer and the integrator both brought your name up. It's typically more than one, or a friend of the client, we've worked on their home. And, so it is word of mouth. It's a lot of word of mouth and repeat business. We have to work less on marketing and more on service, and that's the way we want it.
Yeah, I think that needs to be the takeaway from the integrators that are watching this, is that that you guys have great relationships with architectural firms and top interior design firms, and clearly integrators do as well. But it would really serve integrators to do some outreach, and maybe vice versa, because these integrators have a nice Rolodex of clients and project opportunities that don't have lighting designers. But I think it's an opportunity for integrators to get to know you and find opportunities to work together, because if you have a great experience with an integrator, them staying in their lane, you staying in your lane, and the end result being great, then most likely you're going to bring up their name and recommend them if there is not yet an AV integrator. And face it, typically lighting designers are brought in much earlier in the process, typically, than the AV integrator. Usually the architect is consulting with you, as they're, putting their plans together, I would think. So that's kind of a takeaway that I'm having here. So I guess we're kind of running out of time, but I've got a couple more questions I like to direct. Greg, who do lighting designers need to coordinate with to design lighting for a home? What do you think? Architects, interior designers, millwork contractors, landscape lighting, general contractors, plumbers, and HVAC?
That's a pretty easy answer, all the above. But I'd say the most of our interface is going to be with the architect. What I've seen on a lot of the higher end projects is with the architect for the exterior lighting, and then when you have an interior design firm that comes in and they kind of take over the interiors, then that's really who our primary coordination with is on the interior. But that can vary by projects. There are architectural firms that that have the Frank Lloyd Wright model of wanting to design everything down to the furniture, and that is our client. And they may have their interiors team in-house. I think millwork contractors and finish carpenters, those type of people, having coordination with them on the details is what can really make the project great, or it can fall apart if that's not done. So that's a really important piece on every project.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe to both of you, a big part of what's going on, and maybe a catalyst that's getting integrators involved in some of this in lighting, has been this movement towards human-centric or natural lighting. And so with a lighting designer involved, what is the lighting designer's involvement in setting scenes and preset routines with human-centric lighting and natural lighting? What's your role in that? Anne, you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, we have done a handful of these types of projects, and as a lighting designer, you're working with the designers for sure, but you're also working with a homeowner to understand better how they're going to use a house, what they're looking for, especially with COVID, with people are working in like their spare bedrooms in their basement for a good time and a good amount of time. So there's different things. And as far as programming goes, we do write the scenes through Excel for our AV contractors so that they just need to upload them. So we are tweaking them. And we've even used it in human-centric ways where we've used kind of like the circadian lighting to coordinate, because there is so much daylight. There are so many windows, so that instead of having a single color temperature that looks really yellow during the day and then really warm at night or blue at night, we coordinate that with the daylight so that it's seamless. It's amazing. I know Gregg's done the same thing, and it's been quite successful.
Mm-hmm. Gregg, do you want to expand on that or have anything to add there?
I think the technology that's built into the light fixtures right now, that you can pretty much have any color at any point in time. You also have preset routines to do the circadian rhythm type lighting, but then everybody also, once they find out they can have St. Patrick's Day and boom, it's all green, then I think you can have a little fun with that in kids' bedrooms and entertaining spaces. And clients that we've found, I guess you wouldn't think that this would be something that they would want in their house. Maybe the circadian rhythm lighting, but maybe not some of the bells and whistles and fun stuff. And then once they find out they have that ability, then they find ways to use that. And so we act kind of like a conduit for taking our design and providing, we do a little different than Anne, but we provide essentially some guidance on what scenes we think we should have in different rooms. If there's particular things like step lights going through a house that we've had conversations with the owners that's going to be used as a night light for guests when they're in town. And you don't necessarily get that from looking at our lighting plan. So we try to convey anything more general rules for the programming, and then very specific parts of the programming where maybe we're in the home theater and we want to make sure we have an intermission scene, but maybe we've talked to the homeowner and we've got some theatrical lighting set up for a karaoke scene. And again, that may not come through on the lighting plans, but just having that good communication with the programmers is what makes all that stuff jump and dance and work well.
That's great. I really appreciate this time with both of you. We've kind of run up against our time here. We have a lot of questions that are coming in here. So why don't we address that here now? Okay. So we're live here. I assume I'm being heard by you, Greg and Ann?
Yes, I can hear you, Tom.
All right, great. So yeah, that was pre-recorded, obviously, and thank you for lots of great questions in here. I almost don't know where to start, but one of them is the first part was talking about some challenges. Can you share an example of a positive experience with an integrator, Greg?
Sure. So, Tom, we had a project, and actually it was really our first circadian rhythm type project here in Denver at a Four Seasons building. And we had a client who had seasonal affective disorder, and he would stick his head in the light box for half an hour every day or a couple times a day, and that would make him feel better. So it seemed like a perfect fit for bringing in some circadian rhythm lighting where we could actually give him a light box in a particular room in his house. So we organized a mock-up with the integrator, and we had blackout shades. The connection that we had with the outdoors was really apparent with the whole mock-up, and when the shades were down, it looked one way, and when the shades came up and you had that connection to the outside, it worked really well. And we were able to design the lighting using downlights that we hadn't used before that time, but with all the performance that we knew they had based on the different beam spreads and the adjustability of the lights and the look of the trimless lights that we had, we were able to substitute our original spec for the circadian rhythm light spec and create a successful project where they came in and spent a lot of time on the programming and just really dialing it in for the owner. So I thought that was great, where we had conversations offline about what to do with the mock-up, what kind of specifications we were having, and we were presenting that to the owner, and the integrator was there as just a really solid backup, and then able to implement that in a way that it just turned out to be a great collaboration.
Mm-hmm. And do you have an example to share, or would you like me to go on to a different question?
No, I mean, we've had, like Greg has, several projects that we've worked together with AV contractors, and they are, they call us, they anticipate any questions, they anticipate any conflicts, and that has been a time saver, a cost saver, and actually very rewarding with these AV contractors. There's a lot of really great integrators out there.
Okay. One of the questions is, from Dave, who's usually responsible to pick the best lighting user interface? So the keypad and the button layouts, what they say, what those scenes, how does, you guys are experts at that. Our people have been doing lighting control for a long time, often without a lighting designer. How is that coordinated, or what's the best way that you see that happening? Maybe Ann and then Greg?
Thanks. We work, because when you think about it, a lighting designer is working with the interior designer and the homeowner and architect on figuring out how to light the home. And usually what comes up in those meetings is how they're going to use the home, how much they entertain. Do they have an elderly parent there? Or is this a vacation home? So, when you think about a lighting plan, there's a lot of circles on the plan for recessed downlights. A lot of those, might not be obvious on what they are doing, but as a lighting designer, we know that those are the art lights, these are the accent lights, these are doing these certain things. So as a lighting designer, we often, it's a separate line item that we do, is we lay out the lighting control keypads. We've done dozens of these over the years, so that we know we keep it simple. The longer we go on, the simpler they go. and because people have multiple homes oftentimes, and then we lay that out, we review it with a homeowner, and we lay out the lighting in an Excel spreadsheet, like which loads are going to be turned on at what percentage, so that the AV contractor can upload those in the comfort of his own office, as opposed to being out on the site and taking a long time to upload. And by doing that, when we go out to aim and tweak the lighting control system, there's already a head start. And we've been told by AV contractors, integrators, that we save them time, tons of time. And they typically already have that built into their fee. So we are, in a way, making them money.
Greg, do you have any other different approach, or is a lot of that the same for you, or what would you say to that on the UI?
Thanks, Tom. Our approach is different, and for, I'd say, the first, I don't know, 5 to 10 years of my company, we designed the keypads much like Ann, and then we decided we were spending so much time programming that we didn't want to be a programming company. We wanted to be a lighting design firm. So now what we do is a lot more of providing direction to the integrator, whoever's doing the programming, where we lay out rules for just general keypad. You walk into a room and the top button does this and the bottom button does that. And then anything specific that we might have throughout the house that we had talked to the owners and they want to have a karaoke setting in their theater. So things like that are very specific. We give specific directions, and then general rules for keypad layouts, knowing that those will be broken in rooms that are very complicated and multiple functions are happening. But I think that's worked really well, because a lot of the integrators that we tend to work with over and over, they sort of have their own way that they do the programming in-house, and they're going to be the ones maintaining it over time and coming out on Saturday night and tweaking it before a party with the homeowners. So I want to make sure that we're not doing something that's totally different than whatever they're used to doing, because they are going to be maintaining it over time.
Mm-hmm. One of the with the advent of LED, I mean, we've been doing lighting control for 10, 20 years, and when it was incandescent and halogen, dimming is fantastic. The performance, you didn't really ever need to have a special interface. And now with LED, it's been a whole host of problems. So one of the questions was, how well are lighting designers informed on which LED loads work best with various lighting control systems? I'm sure you're caught up on that, but to what degree do you have to continue to understand what's going on there? Ann, do you want to answer that?
Sure. Thanks, Tom. We better. There's, when you think about some of these different manufacturers with their downlights, there are 10 or 12 different types of dimming protocols that we could choose. Of course, as a lighting designer, we wanted to dim to black, or we want to have just really deep dimming, 0.1% dimming. So we have to find the driver that works for that. And in our load schedules, we're saying we need this type of, this is what the driver needs. We've had some issues for some of those universal modules by manufacturers. Sometimes we have to break out and say, no, this has to be on a dedicated, on a forward phase or reverse phase, not a universal module. That happens occasionally when there's LEDs and there's flickering. But we want the deepest dimming, and we are telling actually the integrators, this is what we need to dim this load.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I want to take another question here. So to you, Greg, from Dan, as a lighting designer, do you take a proactive approach to verify that your plan has been implemented as you specified, or do you rely on feedback from the builder electrician as the project progresses and changes are necessary? I think I know the answer to that, but I want to hear.
Well, we stay actively involved throughout, the vast majority of our projects, from the time we put the initial red lines on paper until we aim lights at the end of the project. And so we're on site, and we definitely don't want to see things up in the ceiling, especially things in the ceiling that are wired that aren't what we we had specified. So we definitely take a very active approach, and we just want to make sure we understand the performance of what we're speccing, and we may need a certain adjustability, we may need certain beam spreads, we may need something that's going to work with a particular type of construction, and want to make sure that those things can still work and perform, and that when we're aiming lights at the end, we're not hit with any surprises.
Clearly a big driver for our industry being interested in the lighting and more of our controls is on this health and wellness side of things, circadian rhythm. There's a lot of discussion, controversy, all this on that area. And just as, I think the industry would like your insight, are you seeing any kind of uptick on projects where clients or, the owner's rep that are initiating a wellness conversation? Are you seeing an increase there or no? Gregg, and I'll hear from both of you.
I'll jump in, Tom. I have definitely seen an uptick in that. I mean, it's something that has always happened, and we've taken classes in college on things like psychology of perception and how your eye and your brain and your body works with relationship to lighting. And now it's something that's very public, and it's in the Wall Street Journal, and it's in the New York Times and things like that. So it's very out there now. And what we'll have is clients send us, articles. Hey, I read this in this magazine or whatever it is, and ask us questions. And it could turn into something that we have one project right now where it's the whole entire home, everything from living walls to the lighting to the daylight coming into the house, everything is providing something that we're hoping will be a wellness solution to the home design. It's not just about lighting; it's part of the whole package. And then we have other clients that just doesn't really cross their radar screen. So it's all over the map, but we definitely bring it up to clients on every project nowadays.
What are you seeing, Ann, and with your customers and clients?
We have heard, have people request that. Oftentimes we're using, though, instead of wellness, because really a lot of these homes that we work on have huge windows and they have natural circadian lighting just from that. But sometimes we're introducing things, color tuning, color changing, really more on an aesthetic. We had a project, for instance, where huge windows, and we had cove lighting in a number of the different rooms, and we had it so that the cove lighting would change color throughout the day through an astronomical time clock to match the outside. And so it was seamless. So instead of like during the day where it's really blue light out and we have a 2700 degree Kelvin cove and it looks really yellow warm and it looks kind of weird, it is seamless, and it's really striking. So we use color tuning more so on an aesthetic call.
Mm-hmm. I like this question from Bruce, and I'd like, Gregg, for you to address this. And if you have some additional things to add, Ann, please pipe in. Bruce asks, how should a custom integrator professional engage your teams in utilizing your services? And essentially, how can they prepare a project owner to accommodate your contributions? How can they, grease the wheel ahead of time, I guess, is what he's saying.
Okay. Well, I think, first of all, I don't think every project out there is made for having a lighting designer like us on board. But when you do have a homeowner who can afford our services, can afford the fixture package that we would specify, and would really appreciate what we do for a living and what we could add to their house. And so, art collectors are one thing, unconventional architecture that's maybe kind of hard for somebody to figure out, even us, but that's what we really enjoy, is trying to figure out unique solutions in that type of thing. So I think the best thing would be if you're talking to the homeowner that you say, hey, I guess you just were at Sotheby's and just bought a couple Monets last week. Maybe we should bring in a lighting consultant to make sure we don't ruin them and that they pop and they look great. Or it could be a set of plans that comes across and it's some kind of deconstructivist architecture that's just very, very complicated and really requires some unique lighting design thinking to come up with a great solution. Then I think some of the resources that we talked about earlier in the pre-recorded part of this with the IALD.org website is a great place to start. And there's other places you can reach out and find on the internet, but what do you think, Ann?
Well, thanks, Greg. So a couple things there. I agree with you. Not every project needs a lighting designer, but I've had AV contractors reach out to me and ask, okay, Ann, I think I've got a project that, really could benefit from your services. I oftentimes say, okay, send the plans over. Let's talk about it. Who's the architect? Who's the interior designer? Does this make sense? Is there the level of finish that you would expect? Because lighting designer is a fee, and we're always going to be putting more lighting in than your average, electrical contractor or architect, because we want to be able to, or at least more layers of lighting. Maybe I should put it that way. Sometimes we use the exact same fixtures, we just rearrange them so they work better, but maybe we have more loads in there. So, it's kind of, we like to help the integrators go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I think too, it's like, what is the level of finish of the home? Do you think it's a 3-star hotel, a 4-star hotel, or a 5-star hotel? Right. If it's a 5-star, for sure. 4-star, probably, maybe. But to Greg's point, that somebody needs to realize the value of a lighting designer.
Yeah. Okay. I've got just a little over a minute. So could you maybe put it in a metric? Is there, a house? Is there a per square foot dollar amount that people are spending on their construction? Is there a threshold? Is it above $300, $500, $1,000 a square foot? Is that maybe a little bit of a metric where you seem to be on projects? You're not on projects that are $200 a square foot, but is that a fair thing for people to maybe think about? Hey, you're spending this much money on the construction and the finishes, and wow, you don't have a lighting designer. I need to refer you to Greg, or we need to have a meeting with Ann.
So Tom, I think I could jump in and answer this one. That we, I know a few years ago, interviewed for a project, and it sounded on paper like this great project, and it was a 40,000 plus square foot house here in Denver with somebody who's pretty well known, and we thought, this was going to be a great project, and it was being built for under $200 a square foot. So we would blow that budget instantly, and they don't have the money to pay our fee, let alone what we spec, which is generally quite a bit more. But I think in what I've heard from different builders we've worked with is that maybe around $600 a square foot of construction cost, that once you get above that level, or I don't know if that's construction cost or level of the house, but that is probably, it dictates more of whether we're appropriate to be a team player on that project than the size of the house, or even the overall cost of the house is more like how much they're spending per square foot. We did a 900 square foot loft in Aspen that was $4.5 million loft. So that kind of thing, even though it's a tiny project, right, that's right in our strike zone.
We got 15 seconds, Ann. Do you have any little parting words on that subject?
I go back to the level of finish. What is the level of finish, and what are the level of expectations? It can be furniture, art, architecture, location. So if there is an elevated level of finish, I'd say that would be prime for a lighting designer.
I would love to have this conversation for a lot longer, and will there be other opportunities in the future to engage the CI channel? So thank you for your participation. Thank you, Lutron Ketra and Tech Element for sponsoring this. So that's the end of our thing. Look for an abrupt end here, right?
Thanks, everybody.
You're going to turn us off here. Thank you, everybody.